Sekeres and Price, Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. And if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make it a staycation. Don't fight the weather. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches, conducting things. You cold?
I'm a little bit cold.
You look cold.
Yeah. A little bit cold. Morning hockey practice, so it was early in an arena.
Blake's doing the, is it 6 a.m. practices, or is it even earlier than that?
No, 6 a.m., yeah. Yeah. It's a rough go. I'm a sleeper.
You got one left with the 6 a.m. practices, then you're done for life?
Yeah. And this will be the last year of it, too. Once you go to U18, there's no more 6 a.m., so.
My dad did not play a lot of organized hockey, and my mom certainly was not familiar. So when I first started playing organized hockey, and they told them, well, some of the practices are at 6 a.m., I think they wanted to deregister me there and on this. Like,
soccer
what?
It is.
What? Well, I'm not getting up to drive you that. You can walk over to that rink. And then other parents would have to pick me up to go to the farther rink. They were not abiding the 6 a.m. practice. Supportive parents, just not at that hour.
Need more ice in North Van. Need more ice.
Need more ice everywhere.
Yeah.
Kids used to be able to go out and skate outside. Like, people tell me Lost Lagoon used to freeze over, and I just can't, for the life of me.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Freeze over like skatable ice, safe skatable ice in downtown Vancouver? You're kidding me.
On the regular.
I know.
On the regular.
I know. It's the damnedest thing.
Sad.
If Little Wayne was coming up in Brantford, Ontario today, Walter could not build him that famed backyard rink, right?
But just
it's not cold enough.
Just one more fun thing to do on a wintry day, though. Go for a skate on Lost Lagoon. Can't do it anymore.
We used to skate every day after school. Like, and never was it's too warm, the ice is melting an issue until like mid-March, maybe early March, the rare year.
Yeah.
But from December onwards, you could count on it. Anyways, we digress.
Yeah.
Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. Will Quinn Hughes always be the best Hughes? Of course, his brothers Jack and Luke in town with the New Jersey Devils tonight. More on that in a second. What says you?
Yes. I'll say yes. I think Jack's going to be a wonderful player as well. But a first pairing defenseman, I still think is going to trump. I'm going to guess Jack's an 88 to 90 point high watermark kind of guy. So
I wouldn't sell him that short. I think
he's got 99 already under his belt.
Yeah.
But I think from here on in, I'm going to guess he's a 90-point guy.
Yeah.
And I still think a first pairing defenseman trumps that.
Yes. Here's the thing. Quinn is pretty much at his athletic peak. We've come to learn, we used to think it was more in your late 20s. And it may well be that you're a better player in some cases in your late 20s because of all the guile and experience you've been able to accumulate, understand how to play certain opponents with certain partners, what have you. But at 25 years old, Quinn is in his athletic peak now and has a Norris Trophy.
Freshly turned 25.
Freshly minted.
So that's good, though. You get a full year of him as a 25-year-old.
Yeah. So Quinn can get better from here, but I'm not necessarily sure he's going to have more athletic tools to exploit from here.
No, but that's the last thing he needs. He just needs savvy. He needs the wisdom of how to use his toolbox, so I think he actually does get better.
With Jack and Luke, there is still a ton of untapped potential there. They're younger players. Jack's missed some time with injury. Luke is just getting his NHL feet wet, really. Had a terrific rookie season. But for them to get to NHL trophy level players, that is still an awfully long way away.
Yeah.
And the issue that Jack is going to have is that in a McDavid / McKinnon world, maybe even / Bedard world, it is going to be exceedingly difficult, I think, to compete and win Hart and Art Ross trophies.
And a diminutive center is going to have a lot harder time winning Art Ross and Harts. Just will.
Yeah. Now, you might be able to say the same thing about Quinn with Cale Makar. Alas, he's got one.
He's already proven it.
That's it. He's gone toe-to-toe with the best defenseman in the world, according to many, and authored a better season. And if you'll remember, it wasn't even close in the Norris Trophy voting last year. We were all sweating it here amongst Canucks fans and media, going, oh, Makar's got the reputation. There are a couple of things on his side of the ledger. And then the Norris Trophy voting came out, and it was clear. I mean, decisive for the Canucks captain.
Now, it's going to be interesting for Makar this year because, I don't suspect he's going to keep up this pace that he's on right now, 17 points in 10 games. But he's been horrific defensively. And I know we saw them turn their nose up at that, not turn their nose up at that for Erik Karlsson's prolific season with the Sharks.
And there have been some others, but yes, Karlsson would be most notable.
But because they know that Makar has been better defensively than this, I wonder if people will see it as, yeah, he's got all those points, but his defensive play took a downturn. Like, we know that he can play better defensive hockey than he has to this point. So I wonder if it might hurt a guy like Cale Makar a little bit, but we'll see.
As for the notion of the three brothers playing together, and honestly, I think this gets a little bit more run than it deserves. It's not quite like the Niedermayers.
But it's way more tantalizing than the Niedermayers because, all due respect to Rob, he was not a franchise player by any stretch. This could be three potential franchise players. Maybe
right.
Luke, not quite as much, but very close. We're talking about three top players.
But it ain't never happening here in Vancouver.
I
would be absolutely gobsmacked if it ever happened here in Vancouver. For starters, you got to get two of them over here. It's way tighter to get Quinn to New Jersey. Jack Hughes is under contract till the end of the 29-30 season.
Yeah. They'd have to be on board. Clearly.
So, yeah, it in terms of making a trade for one of these players, I mean, it's a heaven and earth trade. Just to get one of them, let alone two.
Yeah.
So it's far, far more likely that it happens in New Jersey. Jack's got a modified no trade that kicks in the 26-27 season. Luke Hughes an RFA after this year. I allow for the possibility that maybe one day Luke comes over, but I have trouble seeing Jack getting here. Maybe if Luke comes over, the Devils go into some sort of slide later in Jack's contract. It becomes clear they can't or won't re-sign him. And then maybe at that point. But, wow, so much would have to happen. Frankly, I think if we're going to look down look into our crystal ball, I think that's something that Canucks fans might begin sweating in a couple of years with Quinn when he goes into the final year of his contract. Okay, got to lock him up.
Yeah, they'll want to see that happen.
Make sure he doesn't get to free agency.
It also just becomes a distraction at that point, more because of the obvious.
Yeah, July 1st, 2026, Quinn, here you go. You can basically write the number in. Tell us what you want to make from that point forward because we just want to secure you. And not even allow for the possibility that you creep towards unrestricted free agents.
I'm going to duck out of the room after I say this. Who says no? Paterson and Roenick for Hughes and Hughes.
Oh, I think New Jersey.
They say no.
Yeah.
I think on paper it's a favorable trade, but I think there's a marketing angle to it. There's Yeah, I agree. They don't.
There's
do
also
it.
a youth angle to it. Like the two Hugheses are younger than.
But on paper, that's a better Canuck duo than it is the Devils duo currently. Theoretically, theoretically, it depends on how current is.
Define current.
I'll say I use this phrase off there. Back of the hockey card that's a better trade for
Yeah.
for the Devils. But yeah.
Daily poll question brought to you by Surrey Mitsubishi, where it's your last chance to take advantage of the 2024 models. Might I suggest the Outlander Hybrid PHEV? That's the car I'm driving. In fact, we were playing golf with a guy, friend Todd from the Okanagan earlier this week, who drives the same car. He's like, you got to put it in power mode. I haven't put it in power mode
It's
yet.
sneaky fast.
Oh, boy. Looking forward to that. Yeah. Need some open road for that. You get a $1,000 credit right now at Surrey Mitsubishi towards winter tires. Interest rates as low as 1.99%. No charge extended warranty valued at $3,750. EV rebates up to $7,500. And at Surrey Mitsubishi, your first 6 months of insurance is on them. See dealer for details. These vehicles are going fast. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca. We'll get to our top story here, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Hughes Bowl at Rogers Arena. Quinn versus Jack and Luke. And Archer as she loves to start for the Vancouver Canucks.
Wow.
Another change with Noah Juleson coming in. Abbotsford's Noah Juleson, new father, coming in on defense for Vincent Desharnais. Let's first hear from the Canucks captain. Here's Quinn Hughes on facing his brothers.
Obviously, the first thing you do is look to see when you're playing your brothers or the Devils. And like I said, we've only done it once. It's a really rare and unique opportunity, and just try to enjoy it.
Do you take a moment to reflect on how cool it is that all three of you are here?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's an emotional day just because there's a lot of different thoughts and thinking about different things, and you want them to do well and play well, but at the same time you want your team to be successful and win.
What I love about that, it's an emotional day. Like, think of how much hard work, sacrifice, time away, like everything that it took to get not just the one, but the three brothers to the NHL. They'll have the return match in New Jersey on Monday, March 24th, as part of a Canucks Eastern road trip. But
In other brother tandems, we've often wondered, okay, is so-and-so going to paste so-and-so? Like, what happens if Brady and Matthew Tkachuk hit each other and that sort of thing? And we have seen it. It's not going to happen here. They're unlikely to be physical with each other, but embarrassed. Somebody dangles the other guy, dances, spins off the wall. If you're Quinn, kind of sliding down that half wall, Jack going through the legs on Quinn, something like that. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Could be fun.
As for She Loves, well, with the way Lankinen was going, I think we talked about this earlier in the week. I was of the mind I thought She Loves would get the training wheels approach, get the San Jose game on Saturday, kid. It's an opponent we should beat, particularly without Macklin Celebrini. But Tocchet is going back to his opening night starter, lest we forget, right? His playoff hero from last year.
Played 2 of the first 3, didn't he?
Here's the head coach. Hasn't played since that Tampa game. It's been a couple weeks. Here's the head coach on why it's time for Archer's She Loves.
Lanks has played, 5, 6 in a row. Maybe he's a little tired, but I think Artie's got to get in there. Yeah, Artie did a great job for us last year. He's had a start. First start was just okay. His second start wasn't that bad. So, it's not a big deal. He's played a lot of good hockey for us.
Interesting conundrum if he plays really well tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do all of us, because not that Lankinen has been bad. We talked about he saved their bacon and getting them a point last time out.
Mm-hmm.
But if She Loves plays really well here, do you think, okay, that's the hot hand now? We're going to come back to him in San Jose?
No.
No?
No.
No?
No, because you have the Anaheim game after that.
Okay. There's always another game.
I was thinking about it the other way, partner. I was thinking about it if he shits the bed tonight.
We don't see him for a long time.
Well, if he shits the bed tonight, does he go to Abbotsford and get a bunch of starts?
Yeah, maybe.
Do you bring Patera up, knowing full well you're going to have to get Patera back through waivers if you want to call She Loves back up, or when it's Thatcher Demko's return to the lineup?
Do we know that for sure, though? Does Patera have to clear waivers? Because he's already been on waivers. Now, he gets claimed off waivers by the Vancouver Canucks again.
Mm-hmm.
I think is he not subject to 10 and 30?
He might be.
So it might be an opportunity to do that and not get burned.
Well, I think you'd be calling Patera up, understanding that he's not going to play a whole lot because you're going to ride Lankinen and you're going to bridge the gap until Thatcher Demko's return, which we still don't know, but
or Archer Shilov's looking very good down at the age
right,
level.
and you bring him back up.
Yeah.
But no, if Shilov struggles tonight, then I think you're going to start playing Lankinen like Nashville plays Saros, like Winnipeg plays Alabama. He's going to be your starter who tracks for 60-plus prorated starts in a season.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're still in a competitive situation here, right? Like you're a month into the season. Last year, of course, the Canucks were in pretty good stead after a month. These overtime shootout losses, these overtime losses, you've bled a few points here and there. You're third in the division, 11 points in 8 games. You got games in hand on just about everybody. But Vegas is 7-2-1. You don't want to lose too much ground.
No.
Because you do want to finish first or second in the Pacific. You do want that home ice advantage in the first round at minimum.
Those are the top stories for today. Brought to you by Yellow Dog Neighborhood and Foolish Wines. Not 1, but 2, no, 3 fresh hop beers now available from Yellow Dog Brewing. Alpha Dog Hazy Pale Ale, New Tricks Hazy IPA, and Little Dog Syndrome Double IPA now available in select locations across BC. Get them while you can.
The power play. It's been an issue. Scored a couple in the first period against Calgary on the home opener. Scored a couple against Chicago, so the stats look okay. It's clicking at 20%, but as we know, against better teams, it's been a struggle. And as we know, Coach Tocchet was bemoaning it after the overtime loss to Carolina on Monday. He promised changes. Changes were put in place at practice yesterday. The head coach saying he's been told they're one of the worst teams at collecting rims, which means securing the puck after it's been rimmed around. He talked about his players being too reliant on skill, saying, just because you have skill doesn't mean it's going to click for you because you're skillful players. You still have to go out and execute. And he's vowed that they're going to change the entries with different puck carriers and hopefully collect a few more of those rims. Then he was asked about Elias Pettersson and the one-timer and where that has gone. We told you yesterday, JPAT had the stat about how few slap shots Elias Pettersson has taken this season. Here's what Coach had to say about the vanishing EP40 one-timer.
Well, I mean, you can't stand still, and the team's not going to let you take one timer, so you got to move, and then you got to move whatever the structure is, and then get it back. Then when you should be open, so it's a lot of movement, And I think we've been on talk to Petey about moving his feet. You can't just stand still. It's like Ovechkin; he scored a ton of power play goals on that one side, right? And now teams are taking that away. Now you got to do something different. So. I know everybody wants the one-timer, but it's not there. If you got to move your feet to find other ways. So that's really what it comes down to.
And this is a part of Elias's game that has gone away that I just can't understand. Other than when you're in that spot, you are relying on other people to get you the puck. But notwithstanding that, Blake, let's say he's hampered by the knee tendonitis still. This isn't a big ask of the knee, right?
No.
This is really about hockey IQ and understanding angles. And he's such a cerebral player that as we've watched this poor second half, poor playoffs, and now sluggish start to this season, this should be an area where you can make, this should be an area that you feast on.
Well, his one goal this season is a power play style goal. It wasn't on the power play. It was an even strength goal. But that's the sort of spot where you'd expect power play chances to come from.
Right. Because
he scored that and he loaded up and that was a very crisp shot.
Right.
So why can't we see it more?
Because when Tocchet talks about moving his feet, We're not asking him to skate great distances or to show some sort of acceleration and burst from a standing start. We're asking him, like Ovechkin, to find those sly little holes in the zone, make yourself available for the pass, and then unleash that wicked shot.
Well, it's
when
almost
the puck finds you.
It's almost more
this
frustrating.
Should be
it's almost more frustrating that he doesn't have that because
right.
Not everybody can skate like the wind.
No.
Not everybody has those accelerating bursts. But
and this isn't a puck battle with somebody draped on you where you need to use strength, which has been an issue for him as well. Too soft on his skates. This is something that should be like the peanut butter jelly sandwich, packed at lunch. This should be one of your staples.
Well, he had that elusivity when he first jumped into the league. So why did the rookie, probably 20 pounds lighter, have that, and this guy doesn't? That's, I think, a frustration for a lot of people, and that translates into the perception of lack of care because it looks like he's just not hustling out there. And there could be something else at work, but that's the perception.
So Tocchet spoke about the one-timers yesterday. He was asked today about Elias finding his confidence. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, you look at old video, you think of different ways to do it. Confidence, try to give you confidence, but it also has to be within yourself. And I think that's every player. I mean, everybody goes through bad stretches, and sometimes you just got to wake up in the morning, roll your sleeves up, and say, "How am I going to stop it?" And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, they've
old video. Yes, I think it can help, but yeah, there's got to be intestinal fortitude, so to speak.
I wonder. I would love to be in that room when Elias Paterson is shown some of his former highlights.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does he say when the coach says, "Can we get more of that out of you?" Like, what's the retort?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I honestly shudder when
because you're not showing them another player that's like, oh, well, that guy doesn't have. That's you. Where is that? I don't know. I don't know what he'd say to it.
When you say how he responds to coaching, my mind immediately goes to a shuddering place because I'm just not sure he does. We're.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that because it's not like he thinks he's infallible. I think we've seen him almost ridicule himself too much. So he should respond to coach.
I'm at a place with Elias where, for starters, the next time he's asked about his struggles, I don't want to hear I'm my own worst critic. Because I would like to know when that critic has had enough. And I do wonder if I'm my own worst critic is not just a defense mechanism for us in the media asking him the question, but with coaches as well. Don't worry, Rick. I'm my own worst critic. I know. Mm-hmm. Coaches have to be able to reach him, but he's got to allow them to reach him as well. And I sure hope the latter is in place. I sure hope he's coachable. I sure hope he's willing because, after the game on Monday, what did Tocchet say? Some of these guys just have to apply the information we're giving them. There are some players out there that have just talent and skill limitations that are not going to allow them to apply the information 100% of the time. Vincent Desharnais is a great example. Vincent Desharnais with the puck on his stick, I'm sure knows what to do. I'm sure remembers what coaches want him to do with the puck, but is just not all that capable each and every time. Just doesn't have the hand-eye, the natural gifts. He's got size. That's the gift. It's not hands.
And hey, after
Elias has every, outside of the raw speed and the strength as well. He's got a lot of the gifts.
I think most people would say the 10 games played is a decent sample size to start to make some, not extrapolations, but to make some some judgments at the very least.
Yep.
So he's got 2 games left to jump over the likes of Kiefer Sherwood and Teddy Bluger in team scoring.
Yeah.
And it's not even an even playing field there because maybe not last game, but for the most part, Elias Pettersson's getting a lot more ice time than Kiefer Sherwood and Teddy Bluger, and put in a lot more favorable situations than those two as well. So, you can look at analytics and hope that one day those things are going to come home to roost, but ultimately counting stats is how you'll be judged. And Elias Pettersson needs a bottom line.
I like what John Shannon said to us on the program yesterday. Play him with Bains for the vibes. And we anticipate Archedeep is going to play left wing in the Höglander spot with Pettersson and Garland tonight. What do you think? And frankly, it's the vibes on each side, on each flank, because Garland has vibes now too, right? So you're with 2 guys who right now have a lot of love coming their way, and very much in Garland's case is you can feel it, you can see it, heartwarmed by all the love. Once upon a time asked for a trade out of here, and this week was talking about how great it is to play in a hockey market in Vancouver where you're recognized, where they know you when you played well and when they know when you didn't play well. What do you think?
It would be great to see a smile on Elias Pettersson's face at some point today. It doesn't even have to be after a point or after a goal. Like, how do you watch Bains and Garland play and not find a little joy in that? There's the work rate, the effort is there. Sometimes to a funny degree in the case of Garland because he's just a whirling dervish. I hope he finds a way to have some fun tonight. I really do.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. The body language, the joy, those sorts of things are also missing. And you can understand when a guy's in a slump, but I just feel like it's compounding with this guy. And I just feel like there are all sorts of people who are there looking to help, and I just wonder whether Elias is willing to accept that help. I also read a quote like Quinn Hughes gave to E. McIntyre, and my mind immediately goes to Paterson. Did you see this? Quinn on his captaincy. I feel like it's, sometimes my responsibility that everyone should feel happy and feel comfortable. I'm not saying anyone doesn't, but you just want everyone to feel really excited to get to the rink. I want to try to help guys with that.
Yeah.
Like I just read that and went, God, he's talking about Elias. And I don't know that he is, but it seems to fit the bill right now. Garland earlier this week on Pettersson. The only thing I told PD was in 2 weeks, this is all gone, and we're talking about how well you're playing. And then you've just got to stay even keel on that side of it. That's how it is in this market. Just play. Okay.
I wonder if an elevated, I think Quinn Hughes is, needless to say, going to be up for the game tonight. I wonder if that can have an effect. Now, Quinn Hughes, his variance is very low anyway from game to game.
Very true.
But I wonder if a supercharged Quinn Hughes tonight can benefit.
Well, and Archedeep should be feeling good too. I mean, he had the goal called back on Monday, but he scored the goal Saturday. They gave him a nice framed picture there with Henrik Sedin. Or is it Daniel? I actually I'm back to not being able to tell them apart.
Never.
There was the time when I was pretty good. Like I could, even from distance, tell you who was who, but now I'm finding it a struggle again. So yes, the vibes are there on the left and on the right of Elias Pettersson. We'll see if he can have a big game. Carson Soucy, Blake. And this game's a big test for this Canucks defense. Eric Brandstrom has played fantastic since being inserted in the lineup. This is a bigger test than, I know Pittsburgh's got the 2 big stars, but you look through the rest of that lineup, there's not a lot of there. Carolina plays a certain way. They have good players. Don't get me wrong. They shoot the puck from everywhere. It's a unique system. This Devils team plays with skill. This Devils team plays with speed. There is talent down lineup in this Devils team. This is going to be a pretty good test of the Canucks defense. In fact, Shelov's getting this start may very well be because it's a little bit similar to Edmonton, at least last year's Edmonton team. in terms of the way they're able to come at you in waves offensively.
I do like the fact, though, like if it's Desharnais, I'm very worried about the Canucks defense core.
No.
I mean, not that Juleson is Bobby Orr, but he's a little bit more mobile, obviously, than the likes of a forward or a Desharnais.
And he's a little better with the puck, too.
And he's better with the puck. So you see those foibles that we talked about yesterday in the exchanges between the two defensemen when they're under some level of pressure. Maybe that actually gets cleaned up a little bit, and the Canucks can match the quality of the forecheck.
And look, Myers has been decent this year. There's been a couple stinkers there from Myers, but for the most part, he's been okay.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, this is a big one for Carson Soucy. Because Carson Soucy, when he played last year, and sadly the poor guy had a couple of injuries there he had to fight through. But when Carson Soucy played last year, he's pretty darn good. And he was also, he sort of symbolized that commitment to team defense a little bit for me because that was his bread and butter. And yet sometimes with teams, when you got a defensive defenseman on the ice, it's kind of like a pass to go out and explore your own offense, and yet the Canucks didn't do that. And 5-on-5 numbers this year for Soucy. The Corsi for is 35%. The expected goals for is 32%. That is the worst for any defenseman in the NHL who has played at least 100 minutes.
Yeah, wow.
So you talk about 10 games being a pretty good sample size. One of the Ken Holland rules is American Thanksgiving. You pretty much know what you are. You know what you aren't. You know where you need to improve. Carson Soucy, okay, it's been a terrible 8 games. The next 8 games are really big for Carson Soucy, and particularly the more difficult matchups for him. And this could be a difficult matchup for him. Because if Carson Soucy is going to continue to troll those sorts of numbers through November, then Blake, I don't think the Vancouver Canucks are in the market for just a second pair right shot defenseman. I think they're in the market for a second pair left-hand defenseman as well.
Yeah, they might be. They might be, because that was a Grin and Barrett second pairing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would love that to be your third pairing on a Stanley Cup team.
Yes.
But they put the effort into the forward lines, into the winger depth this year, and that stole some quality from the defense. And they rolled the dice that this would be good enough to work. It hasn't really been up until this point. They've gotten away with it with some great goaltending from Kevin Lankinen, but it's pretty flirty right now with disaster. And really, they're lucky that Eric Brandstrom fell into their laps.
Yes.
So,
gosh, I find myself nodding my head a lot these days at what you're saying.
Oh God, I don't like the sound of that either. Trust
me. I don't know if it's just I'm getting older and I just don't have as much fight in me.
Maybe you're getting wiser.
It's possible.
You're catching up.
But we used to have some knockdown drag-em-outs on this show. I don't remember the last time we had a knockdown drag-em-out. On Lankinen, actually. I think we had a good one on Lankinen preseason, should they sign him or not.
Mm-hmm. We both ended up being right on that one. So I didn't want to pay for him, but they didn't have to pay for him. Here's the thing. Imagine this.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to be over here biting my tongue.
Okay, that's fine. I had this thought the other day. If they knew that Thatcher Demko was going to be out for as long as he's been out,
would they have spent more money on D?
Or
upgraded the...
They would have had to have done all of this earlier and paid more for it. Like, they had great fortune that it rolled out the way that they did. Because if they were told, let's say they're told August 25th, boy, it looks like Thatcher's going to be out until at least December the 1st. Like, they're going out immediately to sign Lankinen or somebody. And at that point, that somebody knows that they've got the Canucks over a barrel. And they're demanding $1.5 to $2 million. And that doesn't sound like a ton of money, but as it pertains to the defensive problems that we've just chronicled here, when you're looking to add, those margins are what converts so we can go get this third pairing guy to all of a sudden, oh, now we can afford maybe a second pairing guy. So it rolled out, and just by luck, it rolled out the way that it did.
And here's the thing. Granted, Utah was dealing from a place of extreme weakness on the leverage side of things because they're missing Sean Dursey and John Marino for months. But they just went out and paid a third-round pick for Ole Mata from Detroit, which is a pretty high price to pay
for a flawed defenseman.
For a guy like Mata, who's not particularly fast, not particularly physical, and gets by as an angles, positioning, IQ defender in his own zone, giving you very little on the other side.
And it looked like he might be an offensive defenseman early in his career, but that has evaporated. He's lucky to get to 20 points. So, it's not a good market out there.
So, people are saying everybody is, the Canucks are out there hunting. Okay, yeah, sure. Take a look what the prices are right now. If you need a defenseman, more often than not, you don't have the lion's share of leverage in that negotiation. As for Thatcher Demko's return, Tocchet addressed it yesterday. I think he's had like 4 really good days, which is good. He stacked some consecutive days together. That's a really good thing. That's a positive.
Said almost the exact same thing in training camp, though. Yes. So that's garnering a little bit of ridicule in that. But you're just saying the same thing every time you talk about it.
Honestly, and I don't blame everybody for asking Tocchet because that's your conduit to the information. Yeah. If you're a reporter, I also think Rick has almost nothing to do with this. I think this is Thatcher and the medical personnel and the goaltending staff, and Rick is about, you let me know when he can come back, and then we'll put him in the goal.
He's a half step closer than we are.
Thatcher has been very clear about who's running this process, and it's Thatcher Demko.
But it's just the way that head coaches are about anything goalie.
No, that's what they are normally about goalie, about injuries, and I think it's multiplied.
Yeah, goalie and injury? Oh, my God.
With in this scenario, because Demko clearly wanted to come out and articulate what the injury was and the timeline and everything. It was clear he did not want Tocchet talking about his situation in camp, and I think that's symbolic of Thatcher understanding that he is going to run this process and be back when he feels comfortable.
It's very much wake me when this is over.
I honestly would not be surprised if Tocchet continues to get the questions as he goes along, where he's just going to be like, guys, I don't know, maybe we should organize something with Thatcher for another check-in.
I mean, I don't know when that's going to be, though.
Honestly,
it's October the 30th.
He's a California guy. I suspect he'll be on the trip, right? We know his dad's still down there in San Diego. I'm sure he's going to go want to visit Brenton during the Kings, the Anaheim, L.A. Do next week. So, and he was on the Eastern trip, the Florida trip. Speaking of injuries, Connor McDavid, it looks like it's going to be a couple weeks with an ankle injury, so reports Elliot Friedman, which means he is most likely to miss the November 9th matchup versus the Canucks here at Rogers Arena. And still early. Plenty of time for this to change. But for everybody who was picking the Oilers to win the Cup, win the division, and talk about that vaunted depth that they were able to secure this past offseason in free agency with some of those signings and trade, look where this Edmonton quote-unquote depth is through 10 games. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 1 goal. Zach Hyman, as you talked about, 0 goals.
1 assist along with it.
Mm-hmm. Matthias Janmark, no goals. Connor Brown, 1 goal. Our old friend Vasily Podkolzin is going to play with Leon Draisaitl, 1 point. Adam Henrique, they re-signed him, 1 point. Corey Perry, they re-signed him, 2 points. All those guys have played 10 games. They are getting nothing from 7 different forwards right now.
Okay, so
their lineup. And Vasily's played every game.
They I don't think this jeopardizes them winning the Cup per se, like this in and of itself. You can say, well, the rest of the roster jeopardizes them. That I've got time for. But the McDavid injury in and of itself doesn't jeopardize their chances of losing the Cup or not having a chance to win the Cup, if you will. But I think it does for the division. I think because look at what happened last year. They put themselves in the 5-12-1 hole. That was their low water mark on the season. I mean, they're going to be pretty close to that, I would guess. That's after 18 games. If they're better than that, and they've already got 4 wins, so they'll be better in the win column at the very least. But overall points, I don't know. We'll see where they're at after 17 games. That's in jeopardy. And what did they need to do to get out of that? So at 5-12-1, they immediately won 8 straight games. Then they won, 13 straight? 16 straight after that? And then went on another run of 6 games. So they had 3 massive winning streaks to still finish second in the division.
Yep.
So if you take away or even just trim down those winning streaks a little bit, even if they're mildly better than 5-12-1, they are jeopardizing their chances of winning the division.
The Sportico NHL franchise valuations are out, and every team is worth at least $1 billion, according to Sportico. And it's funny because I went and I looked back at the 2012 Forbes valuations, and Blake, you
2012, okay.
12 years ago, you had a number of teams like the Hurricanes and others, Senators, that were in the $100 to $200 million.
100 to 2? I was going to say 400. Oh, wow.
No.
Wow.
Sports franchise valuations have exploded. You can thank Steve Ballmer paying $2 billion for the Clippers, which really set off a chain reaction of the fucking Clippers are worth $2 billion. What is everyone else worth?
Okay, but I do.
Where
question.
do you think do you see where the Canucks rank?
I didn't.
Where do you think they rank? They were 7th according to Forbes in 2012. Now this was coming off the heyday,
but don't tell me the number
with the long sellout streak and all of that.
I'm going to guess $2 billion.
The Canucks,
1.73.
That's a 44% value increase year to year.
Year to year. Oh God.
Blake, where do they rank in the NHL pecking order? They were 7th 12 years ago, coming off the heyday.
Yeah.
I believe they may have actually been 6th on one of those Forbes lists within the heyday and the sellout streak and everything going.
Okay, where are they now?
Tickety-boo. They're 13th. Like, we talk about the Canucks being a high-revenue team in one of the best hockey markets in the world, and both things are true.
Now,
I think some of that is the age of the building.
But it has to be amongst the most some of the best dirt.
Air rights.
No, but it has to be the best dirt or amongst the best dirt.
Well, of course,
in the league.
It's a parcel of downtown land in Vancouver, which is very expensive.
Like MSG and Scotiabank and few others would trump it.
Here are the franchises that are more valuable than the Canucks, according to Sportico. Leafs, Rangers, Canadiens, Bruins, Kings, Blackhawks. You can understand all those teams.
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, I think those were the 7 teams they were behind in 2012, according to Forbes. Although Philly might have been there. Then it's Edmonton, the new rink. McDavid brings a lot of value to your franchise. It's Philly, huge market. The Capitals, the Red Wings, and the Red Wings are probably a little bit down from where they could be if they were winning. The Lightning and the Golden Knights, all more valuable than the Canucks, according to Sportico. The bottom line is, and we said this last year when this list came out, sports franchise valuations have exploded, and the Canucks haven't really kept pace with your average franchise.
The other thing is they have no facility.
Increase.
Most of these
they
other
have no
teams
practice
has
facility. That
facilities.
very much comes into it as well.
Because it's more real estate. That's
in fact
amenities.
It was last year and the year before we were talking about the Canucks having the smallest increase of any franchise in the NHL in terms of valuation. And again, these are projections. They do a pretty good job at Forbes and Sportico and all these things. They're not spot on,
but they are theoretical. It's like everybody's housing prices in Vancouver. That's what you want. It's not what you're getting. So
and really the only place this matters is at the Aquilini supper table. And whether the old man, whether Roberto look to Francesco and say, how come we're not keeping pace with the Joneses in terms of the annual increase year over year? And look, this year was pretty good for them at 44%.
Well, a decade of losing didn't help, right?
Decade of losing, no practice facility, aging facility. You have renovated it, but it's not like you've got a ton of new revenue streams there. There are a lot of other franchises that have performed better on the ice and at the box office over the last 10 to 12 years. including the Tampa Bay Lightning. Did you see this story from Sports Business Journal? So Jeff Vinik, who saved the Lightning from their second gong show, because you remember when the Lightning were first established, there was like a mysterious Japanese owner that Espo hadn't even met.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yes.
SI did a big story about, is it possible that the Lightning are owned by like Japanese organized crime?
Yeah.
So anyways, then they got bought by Bill Davidson, who had owned the Detroit Pistons. They won a Stanley Cup. Then it was Koulis
And
Len Barry,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an utter disaster. And Jeff Vinik saved it from that and brought it back to the top of the league, won a couple of Stanley Cups. He's selling the team, and Blake, according to Sports Business Journal, he is paying out $20 million in bonuses to the organization's 300 full-time employees.
Wow.
Every full-time employee is going to receive a check between $50,000 and $66,000.
It's a good look.
That is incredible.
It's a good look.
Vinik. Wow. Well, I mean, you don't get a lot of positive sports ownership stories, right? More often than not, you get the stories about the meddling or, spending dumb money or not spending enough. How about that from Jeff?
Aquilini would do that.
Okay, menu time brought to you by Greta's. Great spot for all the games, home and away. Steps from the Arena Stadium. We're going to be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season. Pre-game, post-game, the street food menu, fantastic. Try the smash burger, the arcade. The air hockey table is glorious. Weekly drink specials. It's the place to be. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. PJ from the rink. Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media from Rogers Arena. We'll look forward to this Devils Canucks game. Laurence Gilman, former Canucks executive, on Hughes, on Paterson, on Miller Kesler comparisons, and he's going to explain what they're doing with Brandstrom and Bains when it comes to waiver eligibility and accruing cap space, because that's up his alley. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price, delighted to have him aboard. Blake, people still down on the Yankees, and I don't think they're dead yet. Not with Garrett Cole on the mound, not with the bottom of the order showing signs. I'm taking the Bombers to win Game 5. They're still the dog at plus 140.
I can get points and still bet against the New York Jets? Yeah, please. I'll do that.
I looked at that one too.
Houston Texans, it's only two,
two?
but I love the premise.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION. New code there, NATION, when opening that account. Patrick Johnston, next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
There's some price from the historic Wall Center. This segment is powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing, new locations opening. You got to get more customers, keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to square.ca and see why Square is big in restaurants. Patrick Johnston covers the Canucks for the Province and Post Media. He joins us for Rogers Arena in advance of a Hughes Bowl. Quinn versus his brothers, Canucks versus the Devils. How are you?
Good. Yeah, feeling good. Devils on the ice. It's exciting times down here at Rogers Arena.
Is it old hat now between the brothers, or is it still new enough because Luke hasn't played in many of them?
I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of that element. Yeah, that's this, only the second time with Luke involved. I mean, it's funny. J Pat and I were talking about what Quinn talked about. Quinn knows the Devils like chapter and verse. This is a team that he watches a lot. Yeah. I mean, there's stakes on the line for these guys. You always want to beat your brothers, show you're the best. So I think there's going to be buzz in this game for a long time yet.
Do you think it helps him that he knows so much about them, or does it ultimately get in your head and you overcompensate about this, that, and the other because you know exactly who's bearing down on you?
I am never going to criticize Quinn Hughes for knowing a lot about a rival team. I think it all helps him. This is a guy that, he just think about all the things he's added to his game, the shots. He continues to make his skating better. Like, he does things with his feet that none of us, almost no one else in the league can do. And him figuring things out has been what he does. So the idea that he would get information, I don't think there's such a thing as too much information for him.
Jack's had a slowish start to the season. Let's hope tonight is not the night for the Vancouver Canucks' sake, especially with Arturs Shilov's getting the start. What do you make of the big news from the morning skate? Because there were some training wheels available on Saturday versus the San Jose Sharks.
Well, I mean, in the end, here's a guy, as Rick Talker said, he did a lot of good stuff for them last year. If he is going to be a contributor, it has to be in all situations and not just in training wheel scenarios. I have to believe that they kind of looked at the way these guys play. I mean, we know that, for instance, Carolina shoot from everywhere, which is not ideal for a goalie like Shilov's, given where his frailties have been. Obviously, this is a high-powered offense of a different kind, but still high-powered. It's a challenge, but if he's going to be an NHL goalie, these are starts he has to make. And, I mean, it was a little surprised maybe that he didn't face the Penguins or something like that on the weekend. But there was no easy choices other than, waiting for San Jose. But, what are we talking about? If you have to pick your spots that way, he shouldn't be here at all.
So let me ask you this. Is there something about this opponent and the way they play you think that factors into us? Because they're kind of a bit Edmonton-esque in the way they skate and generate offense and cross-ice offense, as opposed to Carolina shooting from all quarters.
Yeah, and, there's certainly something to that. I mean, listen, all teams are going to know that Shilov struggles with long shots, but the Devils have designed their offense exactly as you said. There's a sort of let's get things moving. Let's play with a bit of a rush element. Let's try to get the defense turned around. Shilov's has been pretty good in those kinds of scenarios. So I suppose it sounds upside down, and watch me eat my words tonight. But if you're looking for an opponent and a style of play, this is kind of it. Actually, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that suits him, I suppose.
Big test for this defense, huh? Number one, okay, Brandstrom, you've looked really good here. Can you keep it up against a team with this kind of offensive firepower and speed? And then Susie Myers at all. Wow.
Well, and Noah Julesen's insertion, too, just to keep the feet moving a little bit, because he's just faster than Desharnais, and Forbert's not quite ready. So by process of elimination, I guess Julesen gets that assignment.
Well, there's a guy that's been on your roster. He needs to play. Desharnais, once again, not terribly impressive. Some brutal decisions with the puck. And, Julesen gets in. There's sort of that element. Well, you can really kill him. No, you're not playing a ton. This is the low-minute spot on the roster anyway. It's the defense is going to be a talking point for a long time yet. I mean, all the reasons we've discussed, it feels like every week. Go back to the beginning of the season, we knew this was going to be a thing. You knew that Hughes and Hronek were going to be great, and then it was a question about everything else. I mean, Carson Soucy, having been nothing close to the player he was last year, is obviously a big story, and I think we're all talking about that more and more. Tyler Myers is exactly, in the end, who we thought Tyler Myers would be. He's only playing 17 minutes a night, and Desharnais has been not anywhere near good enough. Brandstrom obviously is a good story, and you hope he keeps it up for the Canucks' sake. And then Forbort, when Forbort comes back, it'll be a little more interesting, but still, that's like 2 third pairings in the first pairing, right? Like that continues to be, what stands out the most about this team, and why I remain skeptical of the playoff ambitions of this team.
Yeah, so there's reports out there that Canucks are already hunting defensemen, and there's reports out there that Edmonton's already hunting defensemen. Are we in the arms race already? And do you anticipate, like last year, that Alvin and Rutherford are going to go out and fix this quickly, as they did with Zadorov in November?
Well, I mean, the idea that Canucks are quote unquote on the hunt, I mean, I actually don't think that's new. They're always on the hunt. Like this, Patrick Alvin has been ready to make roster moves like every day for the last, 2 seasons? Really? 3 seasons? Like since he showed up almost? It took him a while to make his first trade. We know that. But once he opened the door to, I like to make trades, I like to see what's out there, I like to move on from things that didn't work. That didn't really, I mean, maybe if it's news to people, okay, but it's not news to me. I mean, this is a team that is constantly looking for something new. There is a reason why they're looking to accrue cap space. We have also talked about this. But it's not going to be easy. At the moment, there's no obvious sort of Nikita Zadorov situation like they did last year. I am sure things will emerge over the coming weeks as teams start to really see where they're at. But yeah, I mean, listen, they added Zadorov in November last year, right? Like that wasn't adding a guy, and Lindholm was the January ad, right? They tried to get Chris Tanev in January. There is no such thing as too early in the Jim Rutherford playbook, and Patrick Alvin has learned that very well.
Do you think these two teams trade chances, and if so, does that help Elias Pettersson?
Like river hockey. I mean, Rick Tocchet will hate that, but he does,
will.
But he also recognizes that he is asking his guys to play a more offensive game, which is why he has been talking so much about the staples. He talked a lot about this morning, in that that's what you fall back on when things are going wrong. That you need to have this ingrained in you, and obviously they haven't done that enough, and some of that's early this season, and that's just the process of getting yourself through the year. And to play a team like this, you have to be able to take your chances when they're there and create chances when they're there. And, the Canucks have been shooting the puck okay. They're not dominating games in terms of possession or anything like that. A more open game, I think, instinctually does suit Elias Pettersson. I don't think there's any denying that. We think about the moments, even this season, when that looks like the guy that we think he can be, is when he is carrying the puck. He's moving his feet. It's not just roaring down the wing. He is moving into traffic. He is moving into the slot. And that's when he's been at his best. And again, Tocchet talked about that. He said, this is a guy that, if that one-timer is not there, move your feet. And, the one-timer mostly has been, or at least historically has been a power play thing. But he needs to shoot how those shots happen, whether that's more rush chances, whether that's simply finding more open space. I mean, think about that goal he scored, or the only goal he scored. But if you think about that play on Saturday, he found the soft spot in the Pittsburgh Penguins defense. And I asked Connor Garland about that after the game. And I said, were you shocked to see him that open? He goes, no. He says, all these teams defend around the net the same way. They set up with a defenseman on each post, and the job is to find yourself in a spot where a person from down low can make that pass. And that, more than anything, is what Pettersson needs to get back. I mean, he was so good at finding himself in space. And so on a more open game, sure. I mean, in theory, that does open up more opportunities for him to make himself more open. But the bottom line is that that he just needs to move his feet more. This is clear. He needs to skate more. I talked about his skating speed on the weekend in the story. The thing I didn't get into was the skating distance. This guy used to be like 90th percentile in the league in terms of how much ice he would cover. And so it's interesting to hear Rick Tocchet. And Rick Tocchet's not wrong. You go look at the distance he's covering and use those NHL edge stats. He is way below what he used to be. So whether that is something that's bothering him, or that's confidence, or that's design, whatever it is, he has been that player. I still believe he can be that player again.
Yeah, I think that'd be an awesome storyline. We're all sitting here talking about the Hughes brothers, and Elias grabs control and a hold of this game and moves into the
Devils are a better defensive team now, though.
protagonist role. Yeah.
Sheldon Keefe has them playing differently than they did last
Well,
year.
but our old buddy Markstrom, not everything's been tickety. He's starting tonight as well, and not everything's been tickety-boo for him. I mean, he got a win, an impressive one against Anaheim, but who doesn't? And, you know, previous to that, 3 of the 4 previous starts were not great. Refresh me. Markstrom in a wide-open game. Did he like those? I know first shot, first period, first everything was a problem for Markey, but what do you think?
I mean, he saw a lot of it here.
He sure did.
You know, let's not forget.
Well, I'm not sure if you call that a wide open game or an inability to defend, Patrick. Like, wide open games suggest it's by choice, right? Like, let's play up and down. You know, inability to defend is more just the talent or lack thereof matter.
It was not by choice. But it was certainly the reality. And, you know, he was used to seeing pretty tough shots, pretty dangerous shots. And I do not think the New Jersey Devils are as poor a defensive outfit as those Canucks were. But he's also 34. You know, he turns 35 in January. Like, he played pretty well in Calgary. There's no reason to think he isn't still that guy, but he is in his mid-30s now. So don't tell him. He won't be happy about that.
No.
But
are you saying I'm old?
What? Anyway.
Kinda.
It's a situation that, listen, he's finally playing for a good team again, and you know he'll be happy about that. But
yes,
wide open hockey. I mean, I think all goalies like facing shots, but only to a certain degree. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want to just be shelled night in, night out. They want to think they can stop them all, but they also want to think they have a chance. And I think the Devils are giving a chance for the most part.
This power play they worked on yesterday in practice, Peach, including different puck carriers on entry. What do you know? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I asked JT Miller this morning. I said, JT, what's the difference between a good power play and a great power play? He went, oh, Jesus Christ. And then paused. And he said, let me think about this. And he goes, what's a good power play? And I said, well, we got into it. And I said, or not, we had a great discussion. Came some really, it was basically all about, it's not just about how you get in. It's how you consolidate, how you set up, none of this is groundbreaking or earth-shattering or anything, but they definitely understand. He says, listen, yeah, we're scoring at 20%, but I don't even think that's good. To be great, you're coming in, you're going to make a difference. Rick talked about, you come into the third period and you stick the knife in, that you put the game away. And it's a mentality thing as much as anything, which I've been thinking a lot about this. I wrote a couple of weeks ago about this Horvat factor, and them saying, well, we need that kind of guy. But when they had Bo here, they were shooting at 20, scoring at 22%. Since he left, they basically been scoring at 22%. And part of me goes, well, maybe this is just the power play they have. But they still believe that they can be better. I mean, you look at the talent, Quinn Hughes and Miller and Besser should be better. I mean, Elias Pettersson being a non-factor is a huge part of the story. They have to find a way to get whether it's his one time or he has to be a shooter on this power play. And he has not been a shooter on this power play, certainly not this season and going back to last spring. So they need, it's not just a question of quote unquote execute. They need to actually get into the spots. And Miller down, he said, listen, we've had a couple of goals and those have worked out well, but overall, the way they've been setting up hasn't been enough. And yeah, the zone entries, I think a lot about last spring in the playoffs, and Nashville figured it out. They would do this double drop, 2 different options entering, but then eventually hitting Besser on the side wall, and Besser would take 3 steps into the zone, and then they'd stop. And it was so obvious what they were going to do. And so that clearly is something that has to change, and how they retain the puck on the way into the zone. It's the challenge. And it does come back to the curious choice to not go after a specialist power play coach. They clearly have people who understand how to do all this, who think about all this. But, if they don't figure it out, that's going to be a storyline going forward.
No question. Very, very quickly, I do mean very, very quickly. Is Dakota Joshua going to play Saturday? Is that what we're looking at for his return against San Jose?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It certainly on the road would be an easy, less. I mean, it's not that there's hoopla or anything like that. He's around, and I think we're gonna. Yeah, I think it's like they've got to have a couple more practices. I guess I don't know. I mean, they're off tomorrow.
Well, I was gonna say off tomorrow. You got another practice Friday. The morning skate Saturday. Is that enough? I know last week was talking about how he's just. He's just got to get a little more contact, feel the sort of push and shove of the game a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's
it's up to him. So okay,
because I mean that's been some of it, right? It's just the schedule, the way it's shook out. They've had they had time off on Sunday, and I think that makes sense just on the schedule that Talkett has given to us.
All right, enjoy the game. We'll be reading. Thank you for this, and catch up next week.
Take care, guys.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA.
Some price from the historic Wall Center.
And right now, with the weather turning as it is, it's time to keep you cozy. And part of that is keeping your tummy cozy, isn't it? Go to the comfort menu at White Spot. Find your nearest spot and check out what they've done to make the turning of the season.
There's some price from the historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680.
More palatable, if you will. The culinary team at White Spot has nailed the comfort menu. Mini Yorkies, braised beef burgers, home-style pot roast, chicken pot pie. Honestly, I've got goosebumps just thinking about it.
Go on and on.
Bring your family to White Spot for a delicious meal, perfect for the season. Find your nearest White Spot today.
And we welcome in former Canucks, Leafs, Jets, and Coyotes executive, former Dunbar resident, if I'm not mistaken, Laurence Gilman.
That would be correct. 7 years.
Yeah, so your home White Spot would have been the one on Broadway there, down in Kitts?
That is correct. It was a very popular spot with one Tyler Gilman back in the day.
I'm sure it was.
It was his favorite place to go in Rogers Arena, too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we do the same thing. Families in town, we hit to that White Spot right there on Broadway. Good to see you. Thanks for taking time again. We've drawn some parallels ourselves between the naming of Quinn Hughes as Vancouver Canucks captain and what you guys back in the day did with Henrik Sedin there in terms of empowering a guy who was a great player who maybe didn't have the most full-throated voice in the room. Like your take on what the Canucks did in naming Quinn Hughes as captain and what you've seen from him in the past year or so in terms of leadership.
First of all, there are many ways that leaders communicate. And, in the normal lore of hockey, there's a famous story of Mark Messier when he signed with the New York Rangers and was named captain, and they walked him into the dressing room and he saw a ping pong table in the middle of the room. And he said, "Get rid of this thing because I want to look every teammate in the eye when I'm sitting in my stall." Not every leader leads in that manner. And, with respect to Quinn Hughes, I have to say, watching him play against the Florida Panthers earlier in the season, I had what I would call an aha moment, which was not dissimilar to the aha moment I had 3 or 4 games into my Canucks tenure when I realized that Henrik and Daniel Sundin were not just the best second-line players in the National Hockey League, but in one shift, I realized that they could be 2 of the most skilled players on the planet. My perception of Quinn Hughes was that he was one of the best, quote-unquote, offensemen in the National Hockey League. And I thought that his attention to detail in the defensive zone and his competitiveness was not really there. That changed for me in one game. And I watched him do things in that game against Florida that were astonishing to me, particularly in the defensive zone, where he made plays that very few hockey players can do under pressure with very little time and very little space. And I realized that he processes the game in an absolutely elite manner. And when you compare that to the skill set he has, he's an incredibly effective defender, far better than I ever had imagined. In addition, I watched him play in the first period where he took the puck down the left boards to the hash marks, turned around, and basically fired the puck tape to tape to one of Florida's right wingers and created a turnover, and the Panthers started to head up the ice. Hughes you could see it in his eyes. He was so pissed off. He caught the guy in about 5 or 6 strides in the neutral zone, lifted his stick, stole the puck, and turned the other way, and the Canucks had an offensive zone entry. And that said to me that this kid is a far greater competitor than I ever thought. And it really was a sledgehammer-like moment. And translating that to the captaincy, when you have a player that is that elite skill, that can play as well as he does in both ends of the ice and competes as hard as he does, that's Henrik Sedin, really. I mean, that's what you want from your captain. It doesn't have to be a guy who stands up and screams in the dressing room. Joe Sakic, I do not believe, was that type of captain either. But it's a player who leads by example, goes out and competes every shift, and sets the tone for the team in that regard. And, one needs to look no further than the metrics of, possession and shot attempts that occur when Quinn Hughes is on the ice versus times when he is not. He is a seminal part of that team. There are some great players on that team, Elias Pettersson, JT Miller. But make no mistake, this guy's the heartbeat of the team.
I think you and Mike would have liked this player because you guys understood puck possession being defense. And I think for a lot of people, it took them a while to realize that from a defenseman. People had eventually wrapped their heads around that with regards to the Sedin, is that because they have the puck all the time, that's them playing defense effectively. And for Quinn Hughes, that's effectively it too. You talked about his speed there and coming back. He has some speed, but he's not like Paul Coffey, the fastest guy on the ice kind of speed. But he is just so quick and nimble that, again, the ability to elude people while he's defending in the defensive zone when he gets the puck as a defenseman, and then to just help keep possession of the puck in the offensive zone. That in and of itself is defense, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, if you look at, we looked at some metrics when we were running the Canucks, and one of them was possession. And there is a threshold of possession that Stanley Cup champions up until that year, I can't speak for the years since we left, but there was a threshold of possession that Stanley Cup winning teams had. And, Paul Coffey used to say it when he played. People would deride him for the lapses in his game defensively. And he used to say something like, if you're possessing the puck, that's pretty good defense. And it's true. The puck was on a stick all the time. And when it's on his stick or Quinn Hughes' stick, it isn't going to be in the opposition stick and won't wind up at the back of your net.
Laurence, what would you do with a struggling Elias Pettersson, and how important is body language and outward emotion, and when I say outward emotion, I mean more joy than anything else when you come to the dressing room day after day?
I don't have an answer to that question, Matt. He's listen, we all want them to be, fiery, upbeat, funny, gregarious. But, Elias Pettersson is a virtuoso, and I've never met him. I don't know him, but he seems somewhat aloof in the manner in which he carries himself. And he is, sort of has this distant, sort of hollow look about him at some point. But he's an unbelievable hockey player. And I don't know what the buttons are that you need to push necessarily on this player. I think he's going to come around at some point in the season, get his groove, and is going to be one of the elite centers in the National Hockey League that he is. It's definitely not, coaches, the ultimate whip that coaches have is ice time. And, you can do things to more or less punish a player by taking him off the power play or moving him from the first unit to the second or not having him out on the ice at the end of a game. I'm not sure this player is the type that's going to respond to that sort of behavior. I think, part of what may be at play here is a lack of maturity. As a young player who, social media gets to some of these players, and that could be the case in this instance. Elias Pettersson has to just, grow up, and not to say that he's immature, but it's part of a maturation process that players go through, and there are periods where you're frustrated, but you got to just work through it. And I believe that he's going to get there.
So talk to me about body language then. I mean, Cliff Fletcher was one of your mentors. You worked with Gretzky in Arizona, Alain here in Vancouver, guys like Lou and Babcock in Toronto. Like, talk to me about body language and whether or not you feel like there's a general consensus there amongst NHL managers, coaches, and how important it is on a day-to-day basis.
Well, it is important, and you don't want players sulking in your room or around the team. It's draining to the rest of the players. One of the most effective coaches and coaching tandems that I worked with was Rick Bowness and Alain Vigneault. And Alain could be hard on players at times, and Rick Bowness was the perfect foil in that regard. And he would, put his arm around Alex Edler if Alex was down about something, and he had this infectious ability to, lighten up the room or get to a specific player. I don't know the makeup of the coaching staff of the Vancouver Canucks, but hopefully there is someone among that group, and it doesn't have to be a coach, it can be a teammate as well, that takes it upon themselves to monitor this player and try and bring him into the group on a greater basis, which in turn will probably have a positive impact on his mood.
And maybe that's what JT Miller was trying to do in his own way. We'll get more to JT Miller in just a second and their little skirmish in practice. But we've organically made the comparison to Roberto Luongo with Elias Pettersson and his attitude, and that both seem to have this arm's length relationship with the media, sometimes prickly, but more times just kind of weird and aloof, more than prickly. And there was this sense of being done wrong by the media at times, and maybe by the game as a general rule. Just odd. And then something changed for Roberto Luongo, and I think it overall helped his game. And this is post Pump My Tires, I think. This is more in chapter 2 of his tenure with the Vancouver Canucks, where he really was able to wrap his head around his role in the universe, if you will. Do you remember how that came to be? I think you've told us this story before, or these stories before, but maybe there's a parallel there for Elias Pettersson to find some peace in the world.
Well, in the case of Roberto Luongo, he might not have liked you guys very much. And when I say you guys, I use the euphemism.
The general, yes.
The Pat Quinn, you people. But Roberto Luongo was incredibly well liked within the four walls of the Canucks dressing room. I mean, he was a great teammate. There's, throughout time, there have been hockey players and athletes and entertainers who have disdain for the media. One can have that type of feeling towards the media and still be an effective hockey player. Mm-hmm. And again, in Roberto's case, I think, he came from a market in Florida where there isn't much coverage of the team. There wasn't much coverage of the team. You can really do your own thing and move around without scrutiny, to one of the more exacting hockey markets in the National Hockey League on the planet, in Vancouver, particularly at that time when you had, 2 newspapers, multiple radio stations, and just a plethora of media people competing for stories. And I think, like Elias Pettersson, as we spoke about earlier, took Roberto a little while to feel comfortable in his own skin in dealing with the media. And at some point, he got to the point where it didn't bother him anymore. And, he was at ease with it, and he didn't care. And he had made a lot of money. He had been a successful goaltender. He was on a great team. And all of that just makes life a lot better. He had gotten married, had kids. That changes you as well. I mean, there are a lot of things that go into the evolution of a hockey player or anybody else that walks this planet.
The other comparison I wanted to make, and they're not always going to fit so tidily into comparisons for your tenure with the Vancouver Canucks, but I think this one does too, in that you guys had a prickly SOB in Ryan Kesler that you needed to funnel that energy into the right spots. The Canucks had JT Miller, who was very similar, and I think he's even done probably a better job than Ryan Kesler in terms of finding the right ways to channel that exuberant energy. He was tempestuous. He was, explosive in a bad way for a couple of years. But my goodness, has he turned into a true leader of this team, the heartbeat of this team, and to the point where maybe that's what was behind the little skirmish with Elias Pettersson last week in practice. But talk about what you've seen there, and if it does remind you of Kesler at all.
Well, there's a lot of, I don't know JT Miller at all. And obviously, I know Ryan particularly well, but I do see a lot of similar qualities in them. They are both surly. There's a surliness to their game. There's a nastiness to their game with respect to how they relate to other players. And they get pissed off when things don't go their way. Both players elicit the same traits. And I think there are times when they hold their teammates accountable in a manner that probably makes their teammates uncomfortable. And the Elias Pettersson incident that happened at practice, it's probably a pretty good comparison. I mean, I can't recall a specific, there were times when Ryan Kesler was angry with his teammates and they were angry at him. I don't recall specifically an incident where there was anything that went on between two of our players, but I look at JT Miller, and when I see him, he brings his Canucks teammates into the fight, right? Kesler had the same qualities, I look back at that national series we won in the second round in 2011. I mean, Ryan Kesler put the team on his back and, made it happen. I watched that game in Florida where, the Canucks somehow managed to get to overtime, and he scored that unbelievable goal to win. I mean, he put the team on his back in that instance. And there are similarities in that regard. And JT Miller is an effective player, and his demeanor and his nastiness and his Ryan Kesler-like persona, I think it's serving the Canucks as well today as Kessler's persona did to us when he was in his heyday.
Laurence, help us out here, because what the Canucks are doing. Once upon a time, you were charged with knowing the deep recesses of the CBA, having expertise on that document and on the cap, and of course, compliance. Eric Brandstrom.
Right
yeah, very good.
It's never far away.
Eric Brandstrom, 30 days or 10 games before becoming waiver eligible, and they're sending Brandstrom and Bains down to Abbotsford and calling them up in between games when both teams are here in the Lower Mainland to accrue cap space. Explain the waiver eligibility first, and then how much cap space can you actually accrue 48 hours or 24 hours at a time?
How worth it is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example on that in a minute. But to explain the 10-30 rule, once a player clears waivers, you can recall him. And he can go up and down as many times as you want him to go up and down until one of two things occurs. Either 30 days have passed or he plays 10 games. And once one of those triggers hit, he can't be sent down without clearing waivers again. So if you use Brandstrom as an example, Brandstrom's had a pretty good tenure since he's been recalled. And teams are always looking for a defenseman. So if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you probably, well, no, it's not probably, it's a prudent maneuver. Send him down. So obviously there's no games being played, so you're not going to get to the 10-game mark. But what often happens is you get to the 30-day mark faster. So you're just buying yourself a little more time. That's a competent move by a management team. As far as the accrual of cap space goes, best way that I can explain it to you is the salary cap for this season is at $88 million. But it's calculated per day. And there are 186 days in an average NHL season. I don't know if that's the exact number here, but let's just use that as an example.
Traditionally, sure, yeah.
So if a team is $1 million below the cap on day one of the season and stays that way till the end and doesn't make another transaction, which is never going to happen, at $1 million below the cap, that team is saving exactly $5,376 per day in salary cap space. So from the start of the season to the trade deadline, by my calculation, it's 136 days. So if you take that number of 5,376 and you multiply it by 136 days, you get roughly $731,000 in accrued space. Bear in mind, there's 50, and again, it's a 186-day season, so there's 50 days left. So you have $731,000 to spend in the next 50 days. Now, a player, and I did a little math on this, a player who's a $4 million player, divided by 186 days in the season, is making $21,500 a day. So if you multiply that by 50 days, that's roughly $1 million. So you can't fit a $4 million player in at the trade deadline. But if you start dropping the number, a $3 million player is making $16,000 a day, which roughly translates to $800,000 worth of space.
So you're there almost. Yeah.
Well, but bear in mind, moves don't come in like without there's tandem moves that made. So if you think about it, if you start moving out other players, suddenly you can add a $5 million player, right? Like if you send $1 million player out and you've accrued all this space, you can add a $5 million player. So that's how the salary cap works. So if you have the luxury of entry level players or players that don't require waivers for whatever period, if you're sending them down, again, $1 million, being $1 million below the cap gets you $5,376 a day. That's a lot of accrual up until the trade deadline. That's how the cap works.
And that's what they're doing this year, and that's what they seem intent on doing when both the Abbotsford Canucks and Vancouver Canucks are here in the Lower Mainland. It's easy to do. And these are technically paper transactions, Laurence. Like the player doesn't actually have to go and report to Abbotsford.
Open the door in Abbott.
That isn't true, actually. The player,
okay.
the player does have to go. The only time the league allows a paper transaction is on the day of the trade deadline, because sometimes you'll send a guy down 5 minutes before the trade deadline and recall him afterwards. If you recall, when we gerrymandered the roster to maximize our LTI space in 2011, we sent Corey Schneider and Jeff Tambellini down to the Moose, even though we knew they were going to play game one. I had to explain to these guys, unfortunately, you have to get on a plane and fly to Winnipeg, because the NHL knew what we were doing, and they said, if these guys are coming back, we better see plane tickets.
So what happens when it's a driving trip to Abbotsford? Do Arshdeep and Eric actually have to get in the car and go drive out to Abbotsford Center?
Well, that is what is supposed to happen. I don't know that the NHL is sending their salary cap police to the Lower Mainland to make sure that these guys are down there. But they're not supposed to be practicing with the team.
Right.
So, if one of you people, as I referred to earlier, sees them on the ice or at the arena and does what you guys do, which is report it,
right,
the Canucks could be in trouble.
But that is the beauty of the in-market AHL team, isn't it? Where these sorts of minor inconveniences get avoided. Yeah. So,
well, it's a huge benefit to do it. I mean, it isn't just a huge benefit for the salary cap purposes. It also, from a practical standpoint, if you get a guy that steps on a puck at a morning skate, and turns an ankle, and your team is in Abbotsford, you have the ability to get a defenseman in an hour.
And wear and tear on the players, though, jumping on planes back and forth, all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, so. It's not like sending them on planes, trains, and buses down to Utica.
Right. Utica in particular, yeah.
I will accept you people. I will not accept you people erasure. Gilman, did you hear him? In a market where there's two papers, there was three when you guys managed.
Really?
The Globe and Mail?
Oh, am I just...
I thought about that after I said it, Matt. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It was the one that Gillis read. I knew that. He had a subscription. We figured that one out. Thank you for this, Laurence. Until next Wednesday. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale.
Some price from the historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at scaresandprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
And this segment brought to you by Benmoss Jewelers. Benmoss, proudly Canadian-owned operator. The history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in BC, including Willowbrook, in Langley, Coquitlam Center. Committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection. Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, diamonds available with payment plans to suit your needs. For more info, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. Well, something, and we'll talk more about the Lions and Riders on Saturday in the CFL West as the week goes along here. But something caught my attention yesterday. Blake, we've changed the name from CFL West and East All-Stars to West Division All-CFL and East Division All-CFL.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Did you see how many Lions made the All-CFL West Division team?
Did I see two?
Two.
Yeah.
And one of them is the kicker, Sean White. Not that kickers aren't players, too. We've had great banter and repartee.
So then why'd you bring
White.
it up like that?
Well, there is one every down player, either offense or defense, on the team, and it's Justin McInnes, who, of course, led the CFL in receiving this year. Trevor Harris gets the quarterback nod over Vernon.
Well, that's the thing, is if one of the two quarterbacks had played the whole season, they're probably it.
I'm not sure about Rourke, but Adams, if he doesn't get hurt, if he doesn't lose his job to Rourke coming back, he probably gets that. Instead, his counterpart Saturday gets the nod. It's 5 receivers and only 1 running back. So William Stanback gets nipped by Brady Oliveira, who leads the league in rushing.
And he can't argue with that. Yeah.
Alexander Hollins absolutely is on this team, but he gets hurt, misses enough games that he slides down the receiving stats, and he misses out. No offensive lineman. Broxton was hurt, and then not a single solitary player from Ryan Phillips' defense, including Gary Peters, who had another very good year. And if I know RP, I would print that out and put it in every player's locker. Not a single one of you was deemed good enough to be an all-Canadian or an all-CFL West Division player. What I'm getting at here, Blake, I think there may be some motivation for the Orange and Black on Saturday in Regina. A little bit of us versus the world narrative forming here as the week goes along.
I find it a little bit odd that they couldn't get somebody on D. And again, the second half for everybody was the
not
shits.
Very good.
But even with all that, in the West, again, we're only looking at the West here. They are right in the middle in terms of points against on the season.
Mm-hmm.
They are the third of the 5 teams in the West. They have the third most, but they're only 5 points removed from Saskatchewan. They're effectively in a dead heat with the Riders for points against on the season. And you're telling me that you can't put one defensive player on there?
Yeah.
That seems a little weird.
It was pretty odd. Sione Tuihama was up there in sacks. Willie Jefferson got the nod in Winnipeg. That could be a legacy vote there. Micah Johnson, Mike Rose could be legacy votes at defensive tackle. Linebacker was a competitive category, to be sure. But yeah, Gary Peters instead of one of the DBs they picked could have easily gone there. Anyways, the good news for the Lions is the injury report. Katoy, Green, Neville, Packer, Lacumbo, all full practice. Those are Canadians and Canadians who have started this year.
Everybody dinged practiced. Everybody did.
Ditto Stanback, Ely, and Moore on the defensive side. Seontae Evans, the only guy didn't practice.
Oh, that's right. He didn't. That's right.
He didn't, but he had missed a bunch of games at the end anyways.
Yeah.
And the other good news for Omar Doman is attendance. Just shy of 242,000 tickets distributed this year. That was up more than 33,000 on last year, or 13.5%.
Like an extra game.
And that coming off a year where they were up 10% and more than 25,000 tickets distributed to 208,000. So things are going the right way at the turnstiles.
How many tickets sold for the semifinal? Oh, never mind. That's gonna hurt. They should have been hosting one of these games.
Whitecaps, and they got a huge one Sunday as well. Game 2 against LAFC. Got to win or go home. Voting for the player of the year is open on the club site. Is it going to be anyone but Ryan Gauld? Is there even anyone with a
probably not
case?
I mean, Veselinovic has got a case, but he's sort of always the safe number 2, I think, to Ryan Gall's number 1. So I would guess it's
hard
Ryan
to
Gall.
vote for a defender with fewer stats as well, right?
Yeah. It's like voting for a lineman. Like, what are we looking at here? It's really in the eye of the beholder. You need to know what you're looking at. So probably not.
And, of course, tickets available, and they're anticipating a pretty good crowd there.
I hope.
On Sunday, yep.
And you can be a part of it. Again, it's a best of 3, remember. You win this one, and it's a winner-take-all match down in Los Angeles. So be nice to make LAFC just a little bit nervous. 5:45 first touch, so that means you can take your kids to this match and be home for all bedtimes, for literally all bedtimes. Tickets on sale right now. Click the link in our episode description or go to ticketmaster.ca/Whitecaps.
And a little bit of scuttlebutt about the MLS season potentially moving down the calendar, Blake, to coincide with the rest of the global football calendar.
And they're not even playing this down. Like there are quotes now from people inside Major League Soccer, but they're slow walking it. They're saying we're looking at it. We're just looking at it.
Yep.
To put the MLS in concert with 90% of the leagues on the planet that operate as a winter league. And we say that with an asterisk. You'd still get home games in August. Middle to late August would be where it starts, and it would wrap around to May. And their thinking there is no more wintry MLS Cup. You play MLS Cup in perfect weather. You have your most important games in perfect weather. That's their thought. It poses some northern climate challenges, though.
Does it ever? In a number of markets.
Yeah, so you'd have to
think of it. Minnesota, Toronto, Montreal, New England, the New York teams, Philly.
Yeah.
There is a ton.
You'd have to do a Leagues Cup that's in January, move that into neutral sites.
And I know this is my Ontario or Quebec showing, Blake, but I just can't conceive of soccer as a winter sport.
Yeah.
Like, I know BC does it during the winter, and I know you've
proud the sidelines.
I was going to say proud the sidelines, but really Blake's the parent that sits in the car with the heater on in the downpours.
No. I mean, I do it now for field hockey instead of soccer. And no, I'm out there.
We had Laurence Gilman on the show today. His son Tyler was a really good soccer player here, and the number of times I called him on weekends in the winter, where you at? I'm freezing my ass off under a big umbrella at a soccer pitch.
The key is a very ugly, massive parka and a big golf umbrella, and you're okay.
But it affects the pitch so much, too. Like, that's what I don't get is because I played a good number of years of soccer back east, and we would end in November, and I'd be like, oh, my God, if you made it to the playoffs, you knew you were in for some cold weather games. I played keeper one year in a snowstorm game in Montreal. It was awful. And the parents didn't much like it either.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of like the fact that soccer is played in the nicer weather. Like, I love a Caps Saturday afternoon, roof open, sun out. I walk to the game in shorts, a T-shirt. I leave the game in shorts, in a T-shirt. It's an outdoor experience.
Yeah.
So I would hate to lose that, like to be waiting around till August to start an MLS season for me would be missing out on some really good months and opportunities to go on out and join a big crowd and cheer on a home team here.
I don't know that there's a way to win, to be honest. I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. World Series, the Yankees stay alive with a blowout win versus that LA bullpen. They survive another Freddie Freeman first inning home run. My God, Freddie Freeman. And if it's not too blasphemous for me to use this sentence in a Yankee context, because of course it is a Kevin Millar line from the 04 Red Sox, don't let them get one. Talked about this yesterday. You're throwing that bullpen game in Game 4, and I know Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, he held back some arms there last year. He stuck with Landon Knack, who gave them very good work and kept the score close, and then he stuck with Honeywell, who got his doors blown off. He effectively sacrificed that game in the late innings when he was only down 2 to keep a few of those arms fresh for tonight and Game 5. But you're facing Garrett Cole tonight. And I know you beat the Yankees in game 1 when Cole started, but that's a hell of a pitcher you're up against. The Yankees get this one. Go back to L.A. Boy, you better get game 6 if you're the Dodgers. That'd be a freight train in game 7 if you've lost 3 in a row, particularly given the injuries. We know Ohtani and Freeman are not 100%. I mean, Freeman, it's not showing up, but and then there was...
I don't know how in all of sport, 3 1s were so... we're starting to see it now. 3 1s are certainly doable. But, I mean, by the time you get to a championship series, you are a good team. Like, you've clearly established you are a good team. Why can the other team win 3 straight, but you can't?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, and especially in baseball, when the pitching lines up as it's lining up,
right,
for the Yankees here, like Luis Gil after the first inning and the home run, he was pretty good last night. They got him out at the appropriate time, and the rest of the ball. The other thing, the bottom of that Yankees lineup now is starting to look a little better. Wells seemed to have found his groove yesterday. Volpe was terrific yesterday after the base running gaff. He comes back. You could tell how much it was eating him up, and he comes back and hits the grand slam.
You win this one, then you're not asking as much to go on the road?
Absolutely not. Because if you win this one, then all you need to do is win game 6. And as Millar said, famously for the 04 Sox, anything can happen in game 7. Then there was the incident with Mookie Betts and the fans. The 2 Yankee season ticket holders down the right field line who tried to physically take the ball from out of Betts' glove. Double team, tag team action on Mookie.
One guy took the left arm, one guy took the right. Tremendous.
So they're, of course, ushered out of the stadium. And then they do an interview with our old buddy Jesse Rogers at ESPN. He used to be a big Hawks beat writer, now covers baseball. Where they talk about their season ticket holders. What's the one kid's name?
Capobianco.
Where they talk about defending the foul ball. That's our territory.
We got to D up.
We're D'ing up when that ball comes into our neighborhood. And it seems that got on the wrong side of Major League Baseball, who have told the Yankees, look, these guys are not welcome for Game 5. The Yankees were going to let them back tonight. Major League Baseball has said, no, these guys will not be sitting there. You can give them a refund, but they're not going to be in attendance. And Blake, here's the thing. Don't condone it for a second. If you're at a sporting event, if the ball enters your side of the line, you have rights to it. You certainly don't reach over and interfere with a player. And God knows what can happen to you if you do cross that line. We've seen that before. Idiots running on the field and getting their comeuppance. But if you're in the Yankee dugout and you see fans do it, like they're in the fight. If I know the old boss, George Steinbrenner, he would have been watching from the owner's suite going, how come my players aren't showing the amount of fight that those 2 fans down the right field line are? Well, I'm guessing that caught attention in the Yankees dugout.
2 things. Slippery slope if you're Major League Baseball and the Yankees to invite, if they got it allowed back in, because then you're just like, it's a free-for-all. The punishments are so thin that you might as well just do whatever the hell you want.
Well, you say thin. I mean, those were more than $1,000 tickets, and those guys were out of the game quickly. So
I'm sure they didn't pay for a drink or a bite last night, no matter where they went. Secondly, the more fans that behave like this, do you think you're gonna see walls that low anymore? All they'll do is say, Major League Baseball will say, nope, put up a mesh. Put up a mesh there, put up a fence. We cannot have this. So, it's at your own peril that you reach over and start messing with the players.
Well, it's been quite a World Series for that. You remember in Game 1, the Dodger fan who reached over and, to the detriment of his own team, caught a fly ball that looked like it was going to be a double. And
Mr. Capobianco better be careful what he wishes for, because last I checked, Steve Bartman didn't really enjoy life in the aftermath of.
But that was to the detriment of the Cubs.
He caused fault, I guess.
And if you see the documentary, Moises Alou reacts it was Moises' Allou's reaction that really got those other Cubs fans on Barton.
Now, conversely, if the Yankees do come back, and even if it just goes to Game 7, Capo Bianco might have a statue outside Yankee Stadium before not too long.
He'll be with Jeffrey Mayer, the kid who reached out. Remember against the Orioles all those years ago? Right field, the old Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. Oh, man. As somebody said on Twitter, this guy's going to have his own podcast sponsored by a gambling company by the end of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, he'll be doing a crossover with the Hawk Tua girl at some point.
Yes.
Poll question results from Tuesday. What will get Elias Pettersson out of his slump? There were 4 options there. Reunite Lotto line, play him with Besser, bench him, or leave him be. What did the people say?
Leave him be.
Yep. Percentage?
46.
Right on the number.
No! That's my second time in like a week I've done that.
Bencham got 23%. Reunite Lotto line got 18%. Only 13% of you were with me on playing with Besser. Humi Canucks says need accountability. He's never had tough love in over a decade of hockey. It's time. Make him earn his ice. He keeps getting given everything, and he's earning nothing. He plays tons of minutes. Power play and nightly stats are 000-1. Far too often. Ron, none of the above. Not likely that EP will get out of the slump until the injury that caused it is properly healed. Rest him, for God's sakes, before his tendinitis turns into something worse. And Ron has attached graphics about the medical condition there. 7-7 says leave him on a line for a while. He hasn't had any stability on his wings since the downturn started. And Ghost Goose says, where's the trade him option? Are we there yet?
We're not there yet.
No. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. So, as mentioned, we had a hell of a day with the internet here. We're still not sure what happened yesterday. We have asked Rogers to tell us what the heck happened here. We'll see. But nevertheless, we're happy to get the show up and up on time when we did, because that looked very much in peril. The Whitecap start on Sunday is 5:45. We corrected that in the moment. And then Cam Fowler, Blake, dual national, born Windsor, Ontario, to a Canadian father. Father's actually from Newfoundland and Labrador. Mom's from Michigan. They moved to the American side prior to Cam's second birthday, and he grew up playing in the Honey Baked youth hockey program in Michigan, and then through the U.S. National Development Program. So a American by hockey standards, a dual national on the passport.
Okay.
Anything to self-report?
No, not today.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. We are live on many of those platforms. Noon Pacific, weekdays. Please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local. Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.